welcome to Tech Talks. My name is Michael Bertoni, and I'm the founder and CEO of Philly Tech, and your host for Tech Talks, which is every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Our show is focused on giving you value. If you're involved in the tech community, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a startup, we are focused in interviewing founders, CTOs, co-founders, people in the technology community, and really giving them value. So I'm really excited today. I have a great guest who I have been working with for the past few months. He is a serial entrepreneur, which means he started multiple companies and sold them. He worked extensively with Microsoft. He has his own company called Exit 83, and he's a phenomenal engineer and developer. His name is Matt Kowalczyk. So Matt, it is great to see you on the show.
Thanks, Mike.
So I wanted to understand a little bit about your background, right? So,
Yep.
you know, I think a lot of people from my audience can benefit from somebody like you. So tell the audience a little bit about your background. How'd you get started in tech?
Thanks. Well, thanks, Mike, and thanks for inviting me to be on this week. I really appreciate it. So I got started in tech many years ago. I started working at Microsoft back in 1993, and I worked at Microsoft from 93 to about 2005, working on various projects all over the place on things that I really enjoyed. Probably my biggest claim to fame was that I was one of the people who led the tablet PC project, me and a few other folks, and I had the pleasure of actually delivering that pitch, one of my first big pitches, and I delivered a pitch with a few other folks to Bill Gates back in the day to get him to buy off on the project. And we went ahead, he said yes, obviously, and we went ahead and built the platform. After Microsoft, I've worked on various, as you've alluded to, various startups. I think the startup I'm on now is number 11. I've had a couple big exits where we've done fairly well, and I've been able to sell the company, and I've had some really spectacular failures in there too. So I've worked on everything from developing a music platform to a ticketing system to wine software to a consulting company, which I'm still running today called Exit 83. And so I've learned a few things along the way. I've raised a little bit of money here and there to build these companies, and it's been a fun ride. I'll tell you, I had a lot more fun after Microsoft than I did being at Microsoft because it's just the amount of diversity and experiences that you get running a startup has just been phenomenal.
So Matt, tell the audience, I know your company is focused in engineering as well as IoT. Right. So
yeah.
A lot of people know what IoT is, but tell the audience a little bit about what in your view is IoT and what do you do in those areas?
So what's interesting is, so my consulting company, which is Exit 83 Consulting, we've been around for 13 plus years. And about 2 years ago, we started getting into the IoT space and systems integration work. And what we've learned is that nobody wakes up one morning and says, hey, I need to buy some IoT thingy for my business. They don't think of it that way. They say, I have a business problem. What's the easiest way we can solve it? And a lot of times they'll think, well, there's usually a tech solution for it. So they'll call somebody like me, and I'll run through some ideas. Now, more and more, I've been saying, hey, you know, there could be a little device, or there's a little bit of hardware that we can install, or there's a little platform that we can give you over here to help solve this business problem that you have. So what we've been doing is building, right now we're kind of focused on building small, smart wearables that employees would be wearing in various capacities to solve specific business problems. We recently did a stint with Accenture and helped them solve a safety problem that they were having for their hotel clients. They had some clients where they were trying to deal with housekeepers and keeping housekeepers safe. And so we built an IoT sensor network that connected to a Bluetooth panic button to enable a housekeeper to get attention immediately if they were in an unsafe situation. They just hit the button, it talks to our sensor network, and then it sends a note to a supervisor. So that's just one example of an IoT solution that we built that wasn't focused on IoT, it was focused on safety.
Yeah, so that kind of leads us into what you're doing now, which is super exciting. I mean, everyone knows about COVID, right? It's the new normal, right?
Unfortunately.
It is the new normal out there. So Matt is the type of entrepreneur that when he sees a business problem, let's solve it, right? So he built Valence, and Valence is one of these wearables, right? For the safety industry, manufacturing, anybody who's in close proximity to each other, construction, all these areas. So tell the audience a little bit about what this is and the value.
Sure. So about 3 months ago, we all saw this in March and in April that everything was shut down. All the manufacturing plants, all of the farms, the grocery stores, everything got shut down immediately. And people were scared. I was scared. My family was scared. We didn't know what to do. And people started losing their jobs left and right. And I think at one point there was 30 million people or 40 million people out of work immediately. And we're still have unemployment somewhere in like 15% range. It's just incredible. And I was thinking about this with one of my business associates, one of our technologists, of how could we help people get back to work in a safe manner using technology? We have all of this smarts with wearables. Is there something we can do? Well, we were thinking about the problem and we realized that using a technology like Bluetooth, we could determine whether or not using 2 Bluetooth devices, we could determine the distance between one person to another person. And be able to do something interesting if somebody were to get too close to them and violating all the social distance policies that we all know about and live by today, right? So we came up with this idea. Now, we thought about some of the things we had done previously that I mentioned earlier in the hospitality industry about how devices work and smart wearables work in a business setting. The biggest thing that we realized was, we could build devices, but it's much better if we help teach people how to do things like social distancing than police people on social distancing. So we built these Bluetooth proximity detection devices that when they got too close to each other, we would start logging to the cloud that a social distancing incident was taking place. But what we didn't do were some very important vital things that we learned from our previous experience. One, we don't sound the alarm and we don't beep. We don't call attention to the person who's violating the social distance guidelines. We don't start buzzing and then every 5 minutes or every few seconds, if somebody is too close, they start buzzing, they can't get their work done because they're busy with this stupid device that's buzzing in their ear or whatever all the time. And then thirdly, we don't track location of any of the employees on a job site. So what we designed was a device. It's about this big. It's in manufacturing right now. I really wish I could have had one, but I'll give you something to scale. So it's about this size. And it's something that you can either wear on your helmet, or you can wear on your vest, or you can wear on your belt. And when it gets close to another device, about this size, right, that somebody else has, it will start logging to the cloud that these people were next to each other. Now, why is that interesting? Well, that's interesting because once a day, we can run a report, or however often a supervisor wants to see it, and see which teams or which people are being socially distant. And that's really important. Now, we all know that safety isn't there's not a single magic bullet that can provide an entire safe environment. So we've been working with various partners to take our device that solves one part of the equation, and there's a handful of other people, whether it's check-in or it's a thermal gun or whatever, to help create this safer environment. Now, let's say, unfortunately, somebody is sick on the job site. What are we going to do? Well, what we've developed, because now we're able to determine whether or not people are being socially distant or not, and we have a log of that, we can instantaneously give you a contact tracing report and show you over the last 2 weeks how close a certain person who was exposed, who they were next to, and when they violated social distancing guidelines with that other person, and immediately can put all those people into quarantine if something bad were to happen. And we can do that in a second. And so when we've been working with some of our pilot sites, they are really interested in the proximity detection and the analysis there, and that's been interesting. But what they're really into is the contact tracing element to this. What we've been seeing from the conversations we've been having is doing contact tracing is really time consuming, it's inaccurate, and they're flailing. They're having all these problems doing contact tracing. And we are able to provide a contact tracing report that is as accurate as everybody who's wearing the device.
Right.
And it's just something that's not readily available to the full market out there today. So this is really useful in places that are like manufacturers, or warehouses, food processing facilities, or farms, agriculture. And it's going to be self-contained on a job site, and it's usually much better if it's managed from a small company or a small group.
So yeah, reiterate to the audience the value proposition of this. So again, everybody out there listening, you know people in manufacturing, someone in supply chain, somebody in distribution, sure, warehouse, all these areas, people are working in close proximity. Other one's construction, right? That's another great use case.
Absolutely.
So you know people in these areas, reach out to us, reach out to Matt or myself, but let's just focus on what is the value proposition of this, right? What do you think are the core big things of it?
Well, there's multiple. So first off, as an employee, if I'm returning to a job site, I need to understand that the employer, for me, has got my back. Mm-hmm. They're trying to do whatever they can to make me feel safe. They know that if somebody is sick on the job site, they can take immediate action for my safety, and I will feel much more secure going to a job site that has valence than another job site that may not have it. So that's one aspect. Second aspect, as an employer or a company owner, I do care about my employees, but I also care about retaining them and getting new employees a lot of times, depending on what I'm doing. And it can be a recruiting tool because it's showing that the employer cares about all the people working for them, right, which is super important. Now then there's some of the intangibles like liability concerns. We have no idea what's going to be happening with all the legalities around getting sick on a job site, who's liable and whatnot. And if you can show that you're doing everything possible to keep your job site safe, it's a way to protect yourself by potential liabilities. And then lastly, one of the other things that we've noticed, we see this a lot in places like construction, is you have a lot of people coming to a job site and then leaving or doing something in the immediate community around the job site. Big construction sites are like this. They'll go and get coffee or they'll get something. If people who live around that community know that the owner or the general contractor is taking all these steps to keep the people coming to the job site safe, it's going to build community rapport, and everybody around this area is going to feel safer because of it too. And they're going to feel good that you're there and you're giving to the community, but you're doing it in a way that's safe. So that's yet another thing that we found that's really important here.
Yeah, so the other thing, Matt, is I know you're focused on this use case of COVID right now, right? But as we've been talking with customers and prospects and people you're working with, what's the future of this look like, right? So we're looking right now, COVID, you could solve that business problem, but I also know you want to create a platform for this and it can grow. Right. So explain to the audience that, and then we'll take a short break.
Yeah, well, let's hope that this device is not going to be needed for a long time. But there will probably be a second pandemic in the not too distant future, so we'll make sure that we have this technology. Now, going forward, what we have found with this business is as we start talking to people about how we can build smart wearables for our workforce, and this is just one instance where we can provide value back to the company with a smart wearable. We found that there's other things like direct labor attribution. we found this in manufacturing. When we talk to our manufacturing partners, they want to have a wearable so that they can determine when a particular employee goes up to some big machine to build, I don't know, like a part for an airplane, that they can tell exactly and precisely how much time an employee spent on this machine, and then they can attribute the cost of that employee to the cogs of that airplane component that's being built, for example. And so that's just one thing where we're seeing the Valence product, the COVID product that we have, is actually providing us new opportunities to get into all of these other businesses and come up with smart wearables that they just hadn't thought of before. And specifically on the example I gave before, we talked to this one group, and they literally had people with stopwatches at each of the machines, and they would say, okay, they've been at this machine for 2 minutes and 37 seconds. All right, let's write that down. Okay, we'll use that in our calculations. And we find all these people using 20th century technologies to solve these problems that can all be solved using some very smart, inexpensive wearable. And so that's what our business model is now. Is we're using Valence as a lead generation tool in order to get in front of all these manufacturers and whatnot to look and find out their other business problems that can be optimized using some of this newer technology.
So everyone, come back in a few minutes. We're going to talk more about the value proposition. We're going to talk more about some specific pilots we have going on. Super exciting. So come on back to Tech Talks in a few minutes. Thanks.
Dr. V with friends and colleagues as we explore a wide range of topics together. V is for variety here on RVN TV.
Number 7. Number 8.
9 regular. Oh, wait. 13 giant. The usual?
Of course. Number 1.
Jersey Mike's, a sub above.
Welcome back to Tech Talks. My name is Michael Bertoni, and I'm the founder and CEO of Philly Tech, and I'm here with Matt Kowalczyk. He is a serial entrepreneur, has had a bunch of exits. He's on the West Coast in Seattle, and he is an expert in IoT and engineering. And we've been talking about his product, which I want to make sure I say right, Valence, and for COVID, and it's a wearable, a very smart wearable. So tell the audience a little bit, Matt, about, I know we have some pilots going, we have some customers we're looking to bring in. It's super exciting. So tell the audience a little bit about that. What's happening there?
Sure. So especially for people who are entrepreneurs and who want to get into this business, maybe understanding a little bit of the process of how you go from an idea to actually having a device in hand might be interesting for a few folks. So when we had this idea for Valence a few months ago, it was literally something we sketched out on a piece of paper. And the very first thing we did was use some of the knowledge we gained in previous engagements and said, hey, let's do a proof of concept. And so we went and built a bunch of units using boards, and we used a platform called Particle, and took some components and literally put them on top of each other, soldered some things together, put some antennas sticking on the outside of it, and wrote some code, some very high-level code, to see if we could prove out that the notion of doing proximity detection and sending that information to the cloud over Wi-Fi or LTE was viable and easy. And we spent about a week, and we put some pieces together, we tested it, and it worked. And we said, voila, let's do this. And so the next step when you do this is then you say, okay, we have to go build this board, and we're now doing manufacturing with a partner in China to get this board developed right now. And as we're going through this, we also, the next step of this equation is to the pilot phase. And the pilot phase is the phase before production. And so what we do in the pilot phase is we take boards that are much closer, they're custom made, they're much smaller, and there's something that we're going to get manufactured from a real IoT device manufacturer. They're going to give us these devices. They're going to have some dev tweaks to them so we can change things as we need to. And we put them out in the real environment, in a real workplace. In this place, I've enlisted help of a new customer of ours. They happen to be an aerospace manufacturing firm in Florida, who's unfortunately been hit very hard with COVID. And at this particular facility, they've had 3 outbreaks already. And so it's been really interesting. They called me up and I said, hey, I can get you 10 units. It's really quick if you want. We want to do some testing. They said, no, we need 120 of them immediately. And we said, all right, let's do this. So we're in the middle now of getting these pilot devices. Now, remember, this is the second stage before production. And there's 3 stages. So we're taking these pilot devices, we're having them made, we're going to get them installed and put in this workplace in Florida. And then we're going to start tweaking it for the environment. Now, the cool thing, we're using Azure IoT as the backend, IoT Central. And we're going to be able to make tweaks to the radio, to how it's talking to the network, and various aspects of these devices. We can do it all remotely using a dashboard through Azure IoT Central. So it's very cool technology that we don't even need to be on site for. So the whole point of this pilot is we need some data, we need some feedback of how these devices work in the real world, because we're sure the radios are going to need tweaking, there's going to be battery life issues, and so on and so forth. So that's the next step in getting a device to production. And then lastly, once we take all this valuable input from this customer, we're then going to bundle this all up and then take this all to production and start doing mass runs in the thousands, tens of thousands of units. And we've got people lined up who want to buy this thing, so it's great. But we got to make sure we do it in the right way so that it's accurate and effective. And then we also have to get certified by the FCC. So there's also these little pieces in there that have to take place as well. So I'm really excited about the pilot. We're going as fast as we can. The pilot's going to happen in the first part of September. And we'll see how this goes. I mean, this is startup world. You build something and you iterate, but with hardware, it's a little bit harder to iterate. But with IoT and what we're doing through IoT Central, at least we can have some tweaks that we can make remotely without having to build new devices.
So Matt, it is unbelievably exciting, for my audience, what you're able to do. What I see with you when I'm working with you is you have these 3 core traits that so many in my audience and so many people watching this could benefit from, right? What those things are is you have the ability to get funding and do fundraising as you're building the product and you're selling pilots all at the same time. So I want to talk about that a little bit for my audience. Tell the audience a little bit about what that's all about.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's muscle memory at this point for me. I mean, this is startup number 11. So you kind of get used to building the plane and flying it at the same time, so to speak, right? So when we had this idea for Valence and some of these other things we've been working on recently, I realized I'm going to need a little bit of funding to get this thing off the ground, to keep using that metaphor. So I went and started talking to some people who I know have invested in other ideas I've had in the past. And so that's a really good way to get funding, is talk to the people you work with in the past. But at the same time, I had to do market validation of the idea. So I started selling the idea to potential pilot sites. Like the one that I mentioned earlier. And so once we had some market validation, and I had probably a half dozen companies step up and verbally commit to say they wanted to be a pilot, I knew we had something. So with that information, we went ahead and then said, okay, well, tell us more about the environment that you're in, so on and so forth. And we started doing product design at the same time. And so it's the combination of all 3 that kind of they have to happen in unison, or you can't move fast. And especially with a product like this, the window of opportunity is really short. So you have to move as quickly as you possibly can, or you're going to lose that opportunity. So the other thing we've done is, for any of you out there who have done startups before, and I'm sure many of you have, is cash is really critical and important. So you try not to spend it willy-nilly, and you try and you do what everybody knows is the lean way of creating a startup and creating a product. And so what I've been doing is I've been using contractors that I know, not having to charge San Francisco or Seattle prices for development, but prices that are a little bit more reasonable, and then using that, being able to leverage those resources in a way that's very cost effective, and then spending a lot of the money on the things that are really important, like the custom board design that we have to do, and really focusing on the one or two aspects that are really important to us. While at the same time, we are also building out this platform, this wearables platform that sits on top of Azure IoT Central, to enable us to, after this product is done or it's gone its course, we'll be able to plug in other products, other wearables into the same platform we're building today. So to answer your question, Mike, we're trying to do it all at once. We know that we're going to screw up one part or multiple parts, but that's okay. We will fix those issues and we'll just keep moving forward. The faster you can go, the more opportunities you're going to create for yourself. You just got to be aware of what you're doing while you go fast.
So again, for everybody listening, I can't reiterate this enough. If you are a tech startup, reach out to Matt. So everybody knows startups. I mean, when I say he helps you get funding, he knows how to build a pitch deck. He knows what to say to investors. He knows, all those things about fundraising, right? He knows how to do that. He knows how to build products, right? So he has this product valence, but he also knows how to build products. I mean, he knows how to build IoT-driven products. He knows how to build other products. And also he knows how to sell, right? He knows how to build pilots. So Matt, tell the audience where they can find you. How do they get a hold of you? Website, LinkedIn, Twitter, those things. And then we'll wrap up.
Sure. I mean, probably the best way is to go to our website, exit83.com. There's a contact us button up there, and that's probably the most effective way of getting a hold of us. I mean, you can also find me on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and I mean, LinkedIn is underutilized, and I find so many good opportunities just from talking to people on LinkedIn. So I highly recommend doing that. That's another great way to get a hold of me. And lastly, and this is back to the startup world, the best thing you can do is get an intro to me or somebody you want to talk to. Don't do it directly because they won't respond. Get an intro to somebody who knows them. Maybe talk to Mike if you know Mike, and have Mike introduce you to me if you want to get a hold of me. I mean, that is the surefire way that you will get a response. And that doesn't just go for me, that goes for anybody in business. So that's the one other tip I would give you today.
So everybody, this has been a great show. Come on back to Tech Talks every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Again, this show is dedicated to your success, and I'm looking forward to talking to you next week. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. This was fun.
Awesome.